Welcome to today's podcast of Everyone Has the Freedom to Choose. This is Deb King. Join us for today's Cornerstone conversation, faith and the mustard seed. When mustard seed faith is enough, we can thrive. Have you ever said, I don't have enough faith to do this? I have. I have even told God, Lord, I don't think you understand. I am not made for this. As though the Creator could misunderstand His own creation. God's response is often swift. I made you. I formed you. I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. I know what you are made of because I am the one who made you. Trust me to equip you for what I have called you to do. That is my paraphrase of Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5 and Psalm chapter 139 verses 13 through 18. Before we took our first breath, God knew us and formed us with intention. Nothing about our abilities, weaknesses, or limitations has ever surprised Him. Still, we return to the familiar protest. But Lord, I don't have enough faith. That is where the real lesson begins. In Luke chapter 17, verse 5, the apostles said to Jesus, "Increase our faith." Jesus answered that faith as small as a mustard seed could command a mulberry tree to be uprooted and planted in the sea. In Matthew chapter 17, after the disciples were unable to cast a demon out of a suffering boy, they asked why they had failed. Again, Jesus spoke of faith the size of a mustard seed. Such faith, He said, could tell a mountain to move. Why a mulberry tree? Why a mountain? And why a mustard seed? Perhaps because our obstacles do not all look the same. Some rise before us like mountains, visible, intimidating, and seemingly immovable. Others grow beneath the surface like the roots of a mature tree, hidden, tangled, and deeply established. Jesus is Lord over both. The mustard seed was a familiar picture of smallness, yet from it could grow a vigorous, towering plant. Small does not mean powerless. A seed may look dry and unimpressive, but it carries the design for life. Once planted, roots reach downward, while new growth presses toward the light. Nothing may be visible above the soil, yet life is already unfolding beneath it. Faith often works the same way. Sometimes faith is simply taking the next obedient step while our knees are still trembling. It sounds like, Lord, I am afraid, but I will follow you. I don't feel ready, but I know you called me. Faith is not the absence of fear or questions. Faith is deciding whom we will trust while fear is still speaking. The seed does not need to understand how it will become a great plant. It only needs to be planted. In Luke chapter 17, the image of a mulberry tree being uprooted and planted in the sea is deliberately startling. A mature tree is difficult to uproot, and no ordinary tree could survive in salt water. Jesus was describing something impossible by human strength. Immediately before the apostles asked Him to increase their faith, Jesus had been teaching about repeatedly forgiving someone who sins and repents. Perhaps they were not asking for faith to perform spectacular miracles. Perhaps they were asking for enough faith to obey Jesus in something painfully personal. Lord, you are asking too much. Increase our faith? Have you ever felt that way? It takes faith to believe God can uproot bitterness that has been growing for years. It takes faith to forgive while the wound still aches and to release someone who may never apologize or understand the damage caused. It also takes faith to believe God can remove deeply rooted resentment, fear, shame, grief, anger, or insecurity. Yet Jesus says even these can be uprooted, not because our faith is enormous, but because our God is. The mountain in Matthew represents another kind of impossibility. It may be a calling beyond our ability, a diagnosis, a financial crisis, a broken relationship, a season of grief, or a door God asks us to walk through when we cannot see beyond it. Mountains intimidate us because we compare the size of the obstacle with the size of our strength. We measure the mountain against our limited knowledge, resources, experience, and courage. Naturally, we conclude that we are not enough, and we are right. We are not enough on our own. But faith does not compare the mountain with us. Faith compares the mountain with God. Jesus was not offering a formula through which we could command God to fulfill every desire. He was teaching that no obstacle can ultimately prevent God's purposes from being accomplished when we trust and obey Him. The question is not, am I strong enough to move this mountain? The question is God strong enough to lead me through it, over it, around it, or remove it? The answer is yes. Jesus also used the mustard seed to describe the kingdom of heaven. In Matthew chapter 13, verses 31 through 32, he pictured a tiny seed growing into a plant large enough to shelter birds in its branches. The kingdom began quietly, yet its message spread across nations, generations, languages, and cultures. What began unnoticed became unstoppable. Perhaps that is also how God's work begins in us: a quiet conviction, a whispered prayer, one act of forgiveness, one step of obedience, one trembling yes. We may dismiss these moments because they do not appear impressive, but heaven does not measure beginnings as we do. God sees the tree inside the seed. What feels small in our hands is not small when placed in His. As I considered these passages, I realized Jesus was answering my own request. Increase my faith, Lord. His answer was not condemnation. It was reassurance. You do not need enormous faith. Bring me the faith you have. I do not have to manufacture heroic confidence before obeying God. I do not have to wait until every doubt disappears, or until I feel qualified, fearless, and prepared. I simply need to place the faith I have, even if it feels no larger than a mustard seed, into the hands of a limitless God. The power is not in my ability to believe perfectly. The power is in the one I believe. He remains faithful even when our confidence feels painfully small. God formed me. He knows my weaknesses, fears, history, and every limitation I see in myself. None of these surprised Him when He called me. God did not call an imaginary, stronger version of me. He called me. And He called you? Perhaps there is a mountain before you today. Perhaps something deeply rooted within you needs to be pulled from the soil of your heart. Perhaps God is asking you to do something far beyond your strength. You may be tempted to say, Lord, I am not made for this. Listen closely for His answer. I made you. You may say, but I don't have enough faith. And He may gently remind you, mustard seed faith is enough. Not because the seed itself is powerful, but because the God in whom it is planted is all-powerful. Bring Him the small faith you have. Plant it through obedience. Entrust Him with the roots. Entrust Him with the mountain. Then watch what God can grow from one small, trembling, faithful yes. Thanks for listening and being a part of our conversation. If this message meets you where you are today, share it with others who may need the same reminder. For more encouragement and resources, visit my website at everyonehasthefreedomtochoose.com.